The way that I talk to Zach Antwan resembles most closely the way that I talk to God. One of the constants of Zach Antwan is you love calling people the same age as us kids. It's just like...
I even call people that are older than me kids. I don't know.
What is this kid making me do? Like in the middle of the road?
I'm always a little bit wary talking in open terms how I talk to God, since it can feel pretentious or it feels like I'm kind of peeling back the curtain on something that's meant to be private. But the great thing is that this is the closest example that I have. It's just lighthearted sharing about life. And so as I talk with Zach, and we talk about some really great topics of the education system, living outside of your home state, and what I thought was the most interesting part of how intellect and arrogance naturally go together, and it takes an active intentionality to fight towards humility. You'll hear just how I interact with Zach. It's such a sacred relationship. I'm really proud of who he has become and just have so much fun interacting with him. And simply put, I just love talking with him. Tune in to hear our thoughts. Yeah.
That's it.
Just the most wild stuff.
Okay.
Zachary.
Hello.
So, it is Thanksgiving break.
It is.
I think what we want to go into is like, why the heck did you go to Vanderbilt? I mean, you're repping the Vanderbilt today, right?
Always.
Yeah. Because, I don't know, what would you say? Like, at least 2/3, probably closer to 3/4 of our graduating class in high school stayed in state? Or is that a little bit too much?
I'd probably, there were 150, I'd say it was probably like 80 to 90 out of the hundreds. Yeah, probably about 2/3.
Yeah. But like...
Close to.
Not that you were set on... Well, I don't know. Actually, you tell me. Were you like set on Vanderbilt, or were you more set on like going out of state, or was it literally just like where you got the best acceptance?
Kind of where I got in, but also like I did not really want to go to Michigan. Like it was the only school in the state that I applied to was Michigan, and it was just like really close to home. I felt like I wouldn't grow as much as a person because I would have probably just stayed friends with a lot of the same people from high school.
Yeah, that's a good point. I
that's
kind of
like,
remember that.
Think about like all of our like other friends that went to Michigan. Like most of them are still friends now. They were all like in the same frat together and things like that, which like is great, of course. But like, I felt like I wanted to like experience something different.
Yeah.
And I'd already done that before, like with high school, like gone through the experience of going from like the West Bloomfield public schools, then going to Brother Rice for high school, and like leaving all of my friends behind and kind of starting over, quote unquote, because I didn't know anyone.
You just hate us. I mean, just say it.
Exactly.
Because you knew exactly 0 people at Vanderbilt, right?
Yeah.
You didn't know any grads?
I knew the one person I knew was this girl named Ella. She's not someone I knew from around here. She went to the same high school as my brother Nathan's best friend from college that he had met his freshman year.
Yeah.
And that guy, Ibra, and Ella went to the same high school, and she was going to Vandy. Yeah. And Nathan had met her a few times because when she would come, she had come to visit Ibra because they were really good friends from high school. So because of that, I knew her going in. So like she was like the only resource I had in terms of just like knowing what went on at the school.
Yeah, but that's not much of a help, to be honest. But like, so you talk about like the adventure and the growth of it, but like, I don't know, was that something that was like, you knew it was kind of like low-key scary, but you just had to force yourself to do it, or was that like what you were excited about, was the fact that it was like a fresh beginning? Like, were you kind of looking to turn the leaf or something?
Yeah, like, I mean, it's not like I wanted to like turn the leaf per se, but it was just like the experience of getting to meet new people is really like interesting to me, and I really enjoy getting to just talk to random people that I've never met before.
Yeah.
Just because like everyone comes from such different ways of life, and especially to school like Vandy, like you have so many international kids as well. Like some of my close friends now are international students that I met from Vandy.
Yeah.
So it's like being able to meet people from different experiences is like, in my opinion, the best way to help you grow, because you get to understand what other people have gone through in their lives, whether it's from other parts of the United States or from other parts of the world. Like that part of it was really interesting to me. But like I also thought the concept of like starting fresh, quote unquote, would be cool to like do that. And it's like I knew I wasn't going to lose my connection with people from high school or like even from like middle school and like before Brother Rice, like I still talk to people from both of those aspects of my life. I'm literally doing that right now, you know what I mean? But like being able to expand my horizons and going to a new place was something that I thought would be really beneficial to me.
Yeah. No, it's cool. It's really cool, 'cause it's like, in my case, obviously elected to stay in Michigan, and then kind of like, I wouldn't say not by choice, because like, I was asked to, but it's not like I was going there against my will. I also got that like experience outside of it. I mean, we can go into that more maybe further down the road, but like, for you, like, do you think that sense of like stepping out of your comfort zone, like, I don't know, that's a little bit too generic, but like in that case of college, do you think that you would recommend that to most people, or does it take a certain kind of person?
I mean, I'm in by like nature very introverted. So like
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like you were kind of explaining some things that would sound pretty extroverted.
yeah.
So it's like, but I know you that you're not just like labeled as like an extrovert.
Yeah, like I've definitely like fluctuated between the two. Like I'm always close to teetering the edge between the two because it's like in aspects like introversion just means that I gain energy, charge up, let's say, from
The
being by
batteries.
myself. Yeah, but your social battery. Does that mean I dislike or cannot talk to people? No, like I feel like I'm a pretty charismatic person. Like I can talk to anyone about anything and just I don't know, just a yapper at its core.
The gift of yap, yeah,
Yeah.
or the gift of gap,
But
I
like
guess they say.
in aspects like it is a huge like jump, like a little huge leap away from where you used to. And like even what you did is also like to an extent like it's not like you knew a bunch of people going into what school you went to. Sure, you were still in school in Michigan and like you had some level of
Yeah.
familiarity, but like in general, like you were still going to a new place with all new people versus like a lot of our friends that went to like a Michigan State that were like one of like 20, 30.
Yeah,
They had
yeah,
like
for
somewhat
sure.
of a connection going in beforehand. So like sure your experience was in the state of Michigan, but I would say it's like a lot more closely related to mine than it would have been as someone who went to Michigan from our high school.
Yeah, I mean, like, because I actually look back to like deciding high schools, and I actually think I kind of messed up in that regard. Like, not that fact I ended up at Rice, but
Yeah.
like my reasoning was kind of lackluster there. So it's like God's providence and how I make sense of like where I'm at now. Like, absolutely, I was meant to be at Rice, but like a lot of that was like kind of asking my classmates in eighth grade, who like none of them I'm like friends with anymore, but it was still like this insecurity of like, hey, like what high school are you going to? And honestly, there was two guys that I played soccer with that said they were going to Rice, and then they pulled out and went to like U of D at the last second. So it's like my strategy kind of failed there, but I see where like making those kinds of life decisions, and granted, I think the college one is bigger than the high school one. It's just like letting one of the variables be like who else is doing it with me is kind of poor. Like
Yeah.
it's not
That's the thing.
great.
At the end of the day, it's your life. Like, it was a hard decision for me to choose to go to like Vandy, for example, just because it was like I did literally know no one, and that was like scary to me at the time. But after having done it and like even experiencing it, like moving to Chicago, let's say afterwards, like it's just so beneficial, and I feel like I grew so much from the experience that like I would definitely recommend it to anyone to do because like it's the first time in my life that I felt like I was purely like independent, let's say, and like
Yeah.
really in charge of everything. Like, sure, like, was I like doing all of this crazy stuff? No, but like, it was the first time I like lived away from my parents. Like, it was like 10 hours drive away from like where I grew up. And like,
Yeah.
I didn't have anyone that I could just like go to like talk about things like in person, which I am also not a huge texter. I don't really like texting anymore. So it's
Yeah.
like, that's
Me
not going to
neither.
help with like keeping in contact with people from back home.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I just think in general, like it was like a very beneficial experience for me to like grow a lot as a human being from like the age of 18 to 21 through college.
Mm-hmm. Well, like when I think about that, like this is really putting the cart before the horse. But like when I think about like the future for me, it's just like I think about like, oh man, like like where my kids would end up is just like out of state tuition so much more than in state tuition. So just like stay in state. But I like that you're highlighting that it's not that like I almost said Nashville. Nashville's not a state. Tennessee's a state. Tennessee isn't like this magical place compared to Michigan, but it's just like anywhere that you go, even if it's like Adrian College or like to the UP or something, or maybe it is like Wayne State or something, like wherever the adventure lies, like that, it almost like calls you forth and like to take the safer route a lot of times, like almost it's not even like safer. It's like it's almost at your own danger to take the safer route because you're missing out on like the growth of what could be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's like the way I saw it, like obviously like I have two older brothers and both of them went to school out of state. So like
Hmm.
that was already something I've seen them do, which probably was a big influence for me when I was applying. But like
Yeah.
the other like side of it, like yeah, like Vandy's a private school, it was expensive, but like they had good programs for financial aid. It's not like I was paying like their full disgusting tuition of like it's like 80K a year now.
Holy
Something
cow.
insane like that.
What?
But like
Oh
that's the
my
thing, like
gosh.
they're the number one financial aid in the country, first of all.
Oh, I didn't know
And then
that.
outside of that, like in my opinion, going to a school like that, that's like a top what 15, top 10 school in the country,
Hmm.
like at the end of the day, in the long run, it's gonna end up benefiting me because I'm gonna get a lot of opportunities in terms of like my career
Hmm.
from going to that school.
Yeah.
Which that is what in my opinion is like such a huge benefit of that, like, and then I'm not saying you need to go to some like top school out of state,
Hmm.
like of course not, but it's like those are things that influence my decision, and it's like other things like scholarships that you can get or
Hmm.
financial aid that like most private institutions have, like those are big factors to take into account without just looking at the pure like price tag that you'll see online, because you're never going to know what it's going to cost you until you get in and they tell you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're just kind of window shopping boy boots and run around Nashville or something like
Yeah.
that.
And that's like most so many people I know that were like applying to colleges, and it's like one of the big influences was like sports and like the culture like that. Like it's not like obviously like let's be real, like Vandy's got sports. Outside like I mean baseball, sure, but like
Yeah.
baseball is probably my least favorite sport to watch. No
Uh,
offense to baseball lovers, but it's just that wasn't really something I cared as much about. Like the big thing I did care about was like what the actual other students were going to be like, and like the other
mhm.
kids that were going to be all moving to this new place, and like from all the schools that I visited, I felt the most like I feel like at home and
Mhm.
similar to a lot of the people that are going to Vandy, just because like a lot of them were very similar to me. Were like they were like the one kid from their high school. They didn't know anyone else going, so it was like
Yeah.
a bunch of people coming from all over the country.
Yeah, because
and world.
Vanderbilt isn't a school where you can get 30 kids going to the
Exactly.
same high
The,
school.
the the most I saw was like local Nashville schools or like Tennessee schools. Like
Yeah.
they would maybe have two kids at high school, three, and or maybe they would know someone from like a sport that went to a rival high school, and like that's it. So it's like everyone was starting on that fresh foot, which I really liked the
Hmm.
idea of that, because like it's not like people are coming in with like all these friend groups and stuff like what you'd get at like a state school.
Hmm.
So like that was like a huge thing that like when I toured the school and like talked to students that had gone that were going there at the time, um, that was like a huge draw for me because it was like everyone's at the same point, starting
Right.
fresh, really.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like one of the constants of Zach Antwan is you love calling people the same age as us kids.
I do.
It's just
And
like
I even call people that are older than me kids. I don't know.
I
It's just such a funny term to use to
Yeah, I know.
describe an adult.
Call your abuelo a kid or something like that. But like, okay, so like you know, I want to go back to like you went in with a plan, like it was almost a transaction. That might be a little bit too harsh to say, but like you went in, you know, you were willing to pay X amount for tuition, and now you know you're working this great job in Chicago. But like, I'm kind of curious. Like, I would almost dare to say that like you were like the ideal example of what college can do for someone. But like, I know that there's a lot of people buzzing about like when is the way that college is going in the United States gonna like when's the bubble gonna burst? Like I
Oh,
don't know. Do you have like thoughts about
I
that? I
have a
mean,
lot of thoughts about college. I
okay,
think I
because
think
I think I do
college is one of the
too.
biggest scams in the United States. Like
Sure.
it's so ridiculous like what it's turned into. Like at
Hmm.
the end of the day, you're basically paying in a lot of cases hundreds of $1,000s to get a piece of paper.
Yeah.
The majority of the information that you learn in college is completely useless to what your career is going to have. I use almost nothing that I learned in college other than just like I don't know, like skills in terms of like leadership or like
Hmm.
teamwork, things like that. None of the actual knowledge I learned has been really useful or used at all. Like
Yeah.
the biggest skill you get from school, which I know is the point of school, is
Hmm.
the ability to learn. Like that fundamental concept of knowing like what things are best for you to learn and like how you pick things up quickly,
Mm-hmm.
that is the most essential skill I would say from school in general.
Right.
And that's like kind of what, in my opinion, the point of like college or high school is to teach you. Because most of the stuff you learn in school, like no matter what your major is, like maybe if you're going to like med school, different story. But like
Yeah.
for people that are going to corporate America, almost everything you learn on your job, that you do on your job, you learn on the job.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, in my opinion, I think college has just turned into like a huge barrier for people to have to go through to get into like the workforce, which is, in my opinion, so unnecessary for how much it costs. Like,
Yeah.
and if you look back at like the price of college from like what 30, 40 years ago, like
Mm-hmm.
the difference is drastic in how much they had to pay, and college wasn't necessary. And if you look at other countries like in Europe, for example, like college is like an optional thing for you to go into your career. It's not, you don't need to go to university to like, have a good career. But like I feel like in the United States it's become the point where it's like if you don't have that degree, you're shooting yourself in the foot before you even start your career. And I'm not saying that you have to get one, but it feels like you do, especially at such a young age. You're pressured to so much.
Right.
And
well, it's like, it seems like one interesting thing that like that brings to mind for me is this thing called the Pareto distribution. This is a statistics thing, the class that I dropped at Rice, and you were strong enough to not drop, but like it basically, like, the biblical principle in Matthew of like, to those who have, like, more will be given, but to those who don't have, even what they have will be taken away. Like, the best example of this is like if you look at like the entire like corpus or library of classical music, like an insane amount of it or percentage of it is composed by like 4 people. So you have like Bach, Mozart, Tchaikovsky, and I forget who the 4th one in that one is, maybe Schubert or something. But like it almost seems like college, it's almost like, yeah, like if you want to get some of these jobs and you don't do it, then like it's getting even harder to get into that. But then like the people that are willing to take on those loans, are able to have it paid, is like they're able to succeed in it.
It's a financial barrier.
Right. So like I'm kind of curious, like I know that it's like there's practical steps for maybe like, I don't even want to say like reform, but just like change in the system. But like I want to, like, I'm curious because I think you and I could talk pretty interestingly about this, but like let's like remove all presuppositions, and I'm gonna like pose a few options of like what should it be. So like you work at Deloitte, right?
Sure.
Should you go to like Deloitte University where they give you 4 years of practical training? Should high schools become more specialized so that once you're 18 you're ready to do these things? Or like do you think that you were a lot smarter at 22 to begin your job than when you were 18, stuff like that?
I think it's a mix of those things. Like, I think part of I don't know, part of my issue with the education system is that it's so just like boxed up. Like, you have to follow these things in exact like regulations. Like, there's no room for creativity or difference between like people. Like, what you're interested in, what you're good at, is going to be completely different from what I'm interested and good at.
Yeah.
Yet we all have to go through the same exact curriculum that's like for until we're 18 and graduate high school.
Yeah, it's painting with broad strokes. It's kind of like giving you all of the options to choose from,
Yeah, and so like if I've always been good, I'll just use myself as an example. I've always been really good at math and science. Obviously, like, that's not to say that I wasn't good at like English or reading, but like those are by far my biggest interests and what I always excelled in. That was very obvious from an early age. Like when I was in middle school, when I was in 6th grade, I was 3 years ahead in math.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious that I'm pretty skilled at math and like do well in it.
Yeah.
But like in a lot of cases, like I have to still take all this like curriculum that of course in some aspects is important, but like it should start to be specialized, I think, in the high school level, to where like sure you still need to take like a fundamental 4 classes of like a math, science, like history, and like English.
Yeah.
That's fine. But outside of that, like I should have way more flexibility to take more courses that are aligned with like what I like maybe want to do, or like just more interested in. Like I feel like we didn't really have the opportunity to do that until like basically our senior year of high school. Like that was when I got to take like anatomy because it's a topic that's really interesting to me, or like organic chemistry, things like that I would have wanted to take earlier, but I never had the opportunity to because I'm forced to take all of these other random classes that were like speech and things like that, which of course is a fundamental concept, is important, but at the same time I could gain values from other things that are more interesting to me. And like I think the same applies with college and like
Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So like, you're not saying that like Vanderbilt was this dream because you got to finally learn what you wanted to learn. It wasn't that cut and dry with how well it contributed to your career.
I started at Vandy, like I applied as a biomedical engineer with the plans to be pre-med because I've always been really interested in like math and science and like especially like anatomy. I think is fascinating. I got to school, was taking classes in BME, and like I liked it, and I probably would have stuck with it, but
Yeah.
because of how Vandy was set up, which I loved, your freshman year in the engineering school, you're required to take what are called engineering modules,
Yeah.
which there's I think eight like engineering majors at Vandy, so you take one module for each major to give you kind of a little bit of
like
exposure.
a sample platter.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's like each one's like throughout your freshman year is what, like 40 weeks, let's say, something like that, 30, 40 weeks. So you took like 5 to 10 weeks of each major
Yeah.
to like, and you got to choose. Like you didn't have to do all of them, but like I tried to do as many as I could. So like I took a mechanical engineering one, took a chemical engineering one, I took computer science, I took computer engineering, electrical engineering, whatever. I really liked computer science a lot, and it just felt like the right thing for me compared to what I was doing with biomedical engineering.
Right.
Just because like it felt like puzzle solving to me, and I love doing things like logic based puzzles, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's I ended up switching to computer science at the start of my sophomore year.
Basically because of that module. That
Exactly, because I was able to get that little platter of everything.
Yeah.
And that's why I switched. Not because I like was like, oh, I hate medical school and I never want to do biomedical engineering. Like those are huge interests of mine, and like I would have still enjoyed doing those things, but I just found something I liked more that I had never gotten any exposure to in high school. There's no like AP like Java course at Brother Rice, like, but that is a course that are taught at other schools that I would have had exposure to.
Sure.
And because of that, like I ended up doing the computer science and math like majors, and then went obviously like now doing more like software development based like consulting work. So it's like, but all that stemmed from me being able to like really get exposure in everything and like pick and choose from there what I want to do.
Yeah, so I mean, I know that this isn't a contradiction, but it almost sounds a little bit contradictory right now where like you got the sampler platter in college and you enjoyed that actually charted a course for you, but it seems like in high school you got the sampler platter, but it seemed like it wasn't specific enough. But I mean, we're talking about a very wide amount of like all the subjects in high school versus in college.
Yeah.
Your sampler platter was all engineering though. So
But that's what I'm saying. I feel like getting that sampler platter earlier would have been beneficial. Like imagine if you had, like I knew I was probably going to be doing something STEM like related, 99% chance when I was entering high school.
Right.
Getting that sampler platter then of like, let's say STEM areas of like going into different engineering areas or going to like what medical like areas you could do or to be pre-med, things like that. I feel like that's the ideal time when you're still young. Like by the time I got to college, I was tired of education. I was tired of school in general because like to me, it always just felt like a chore.
Yeah.
Like, does that mean like I performed poorly in school? No, like thankfully I was just gifted and was able to like do things well. But like I was very exhausted with school and like the process of it because it just like doesn't fit how I learn and just how my brain works. And like getting that sampler earlier, I think would have like invigorated me more. To like stay focused from a younger age. And I would have come into college with a way more of an idea of like the different areas and been able to expose myself to way more types of engineering, for example, before I even got there.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Like I remember like C.S. Lewis in an education book was talking about like a lot of education is almost like irrigating deserts, but in reality it should be like almost like cutting down and like shaping forests, where it's not like you have to be like, oh, come on, like do it. It's like, no, like you had so much like gift and talent and drive where it's like you just needed some direction, and then you would have gone with it. But I also don't want it to be like too external where it's just like, the education system is the reason why you're not like the next Einstein, something like that.
The thing is like everyone's different.
Yeah.
For me, that probably would have been a better route. Mm-hmm. The reason the U.S. education system works the way it does is because the average person doesn't have that direction or that drive or that idea of what they want to do.
Yeah, that's exactly
and that's
what I was
like
thinking.
The whole like the average student needs the current education system to figure that out. But the education system hurts like people, I would say like you or I, or like people that are on like the opposite end
Yeah.
that like need more guidance in terms of like into the areas that they're specializing in, let's say. So
Right.
that's I'd say is the biggest problem, is that like it's perfect for the many, but for the few on the
Yeah, it
ends.
pitches down the middle.
Yeah.
And like
But that's what it needs to do.
that's yeah, so it's like you can't criticize it, you just have to say that, well, you can criticize it, but like you can't destroy it or like
No.
eviscerate it, because like in a lot of ways it seems like what serves the most is the best. But it's like I have also like I think come to find that like a general principle, like in anything, like I've seen this in the faith life primarily, but like the more like individualized anything, let's say X can be, like the better it's going to be like for that person especially.
Yeah.
So it's like in a perfect world, like if you had like this insanely smart tutor that, just taught you everything from zero to now, I mean, you'd be a rocket surgeon, something like that.
And that's the thing, like I think my ideal situation is we're never going to change the education system drastically into like something like this.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best situation is like what some school systems have, which is obviously monetarily based depending on where it is, but like in the West Winfield School District, like I was part of like a magnet program, which like is basically just like
Mensa kids.
kind of like when you're like the old like MEP exam, like the Michigan. I don't know if you ever had to take those.
I don't think we took Iowa tests because
really?
I was at Catholic schools. Yeah, so it was just
I didn't
scantrons, but
Okay, but it was like the Michigan like education. I don't remember what MEP stands for, but it was like the standardized testing you took every year to like basically compare you against other
Yeah.
people in the state of Michigan. In second grade, if you scored high enough on it, which was I think 98th or 99th percentile, that you were invited to join what was called like a magnet program for like basically like gifted students.
right.
Like we did a ton of things in that program from third to fifth grade in a classroom with like all of us mixed together in terms of just completely random areas that were like good for us to get exposure to at a young age. And like
Yeah.
that was where I feel like I gained the most knowledge in a 3-year span in terms of like that really benefited me growing as a human being and just like I don't know, learning a lot more about areas I was interested in than probably any point in my education. And it's programs like that I think are so important for like the kids that are on like my part of it that aren't part of that middle pact, because it gave me that individual attention and exposure I needed at a young age.
Yeah.
And obviously like it'd be great if you could implement that in every school, but the issue with it is just always going to be about money and like sustaining. It's like the same problem with so much with education of just like there's not enough money to go around for everyone, and that's part of the problem.
Well, yeah, like that's like I think that's like there's always an ability to like point a finger at like system, but maybe it's like my philosophy background, but like I'm trying to even like abstract like outside of the level of system. And I think like one interesting, I don't know if it's like an adaptation, but actually like an aspect of my personality that might surprise you actually, but like I was very aimless in high school. Like you talk about going in with, knowing what you wanted to do in STEM when you were 14. Like
Yeah.
I never had that indication. I mean, that even like kind of plays a part into where I'm at now. Like, thanks be to God, it's just like talented and gifted in a multiplicity of roles, but like that doesn't give me direction. And it's interesting to hear you say that, because like sometimes when I'm like, woe is me, it's like, oh man, if I just got like an A+ in like calculus and got F's and everything else, like that would be so much like easier and simpler to figure out. But it's like for you, like the grade that you got or your performance in the class wasn't the indicator for you, but it was still something internal. Whereas like for me, like I'm starting to realize more that I think like one of my primary gifts is like jack of all trades and things like that. So it's like for me, like I like learning about a vast array of things. So I think maybe like the sampler platter that we're talking about in high school, I think that maybe appeased to me a bit more. Granted, there's still a lot of classes that I didn't like, but like I really like understanding the English language or like the statistics of things or like how the artist creates. I've been thinking about that a lot recently. So it's like, I don't know. Like I know that's like kind of when you like tap into like teenage angst, people are like, why do you expect me, a 17-year-old, to be able to make a choice that's going to affect the rest of my life in terms of my major? And you have people that go into college undeclared. And I'm like, just knowing you enough, I think that's kind of like, you kind of like, you're like, come on, what are you doing with that?
I don't have any problem with that. That's the my issues with it is that in my eyes, you weren't exposed to enough things as a younger person to have, and I'm not saying you need to go to college and like have your life figured out. Like, of course not. Like, most people don't. And that's totally okay. It's just that, like, I feel like in a lot of cases, like, people lacked getting the resources they needed when they were younger to get exposed to all these things, and that's part of the reason why that you're left so undecided and feel like, yeah, I kind of like this and kind of like this, but like you've never had like a deep dive exposure into it from when you were way younger. Like, that's what I think, like that magnet program I was in, we did a bunch of things related to science and like math, and like that's where I got so far ahead in math because I was able to really dive deep into it from a young age. That's why I always knew it was my favorite subject and why I've really cared about it a lot. But like, if you didn't have experiences like that, like what, third to fifth grade, I was what, 8 to 11 years old, not even. And those are such formative years that people really like don't think about, because like, what, you're in fifth grade, all you're thinking about is recess. And I'm not saying people need to get like trained up like it's like Ender's Game. Like,
yeah, right. No, that's actually a good point of like, like these like
gifted
kids.
Yeah, that's the thing. But it's like, at the same time, like, I do think that it was like done in such a creative way for us to like learn and dive into these topics that like it really did benefit me a lot and like made me have a way better idea of what I want to do going to middle school and high school. But like, if you didn't have some formative thing like that, like, I think it's pretty understandable and fair that you're not going to have some huge idea of like what your big life plans are. And like, even my life plans from what I thought I was going to be doing 10 years from now back in high school is like completely different to what I'm actually doing.
Yeah.
So it's like, even if you think you know everything and like what you're going to do, like it could completely change on its head, like in a moment's notice. And
do you wish the magnet program trained you better in soccer so you wouldn't be so bad at it?
No.
No, you're perfectly happy with how good you are. No.
That's just, I'm very competitive. I just hate not being good at things. Like,
I was literally kidding. I didn't mean to like stir on this thing. Dude, too good at math, too not good at soccer.
Let's go bangers on the pitch.
Right, but I mean, at the end there, you bring up something interesting that it's like, 10 years ago you didn't know what you're doing, and like that was one thing that like, I don't know, like I think for both of us, like if we're being honest, we're probably prone to this, but how intellect and ego / pride go together. I mean, look, based off of that reaction where it's just like, we didn't do anything, and we were talking about this on Tuesday a bit, like we didn't do anything to earn or deserve like the amount of IQ points we have. And like almost our entire academic careers, and probably, your career too, has just been almost like an expression or putting that IQ to use. But it's just like it's hard because like when you understand something fairly well, relatively, like you understood anatomy or you understood calculus better than most people at Rice, let's say, it seems like when you know a lot about that, like it kind of hints at that a lot about everything. And the hardest thing is that that's not a completely like crazy statement to say.
That's the thing, like in high school, I'd say like the biggest like egotistical thing is like scoring well on a test. Like that's the biggest boost to your ego you can possibly have. It's like,
rubbing in that I got one more point than the ACT on you.
Literally. But that's like that's how it goes. Like when you're in high school, like the big thing for like if you were like nerdy or like we were, like it's like your grades are like the big thing, or like maybe if you're good at sports, like that.
Grades, like even if you get a good grade, you can just call that person a tryhard. But like on a standardized test, like
but that's the thing. It's like getting higher than people. It was such a huge boost to your ego and detriment, I would say, like to like it like you said, it's all tied together. Like the whole idea of like arrogance, like the ego, like pride, all is like just what, because I like was thankfully like born intelligent. Like I had no choice or like.
Right, like I know that there's like a couple of guys in our grade that got like 32s on the ACT, and I don't remember the percentile skill, but probably at least 97th percentile to get a 32 on the ACT,
or something like that.
And they felt bad, like they almost didn't want to tell people, because then you have guys like us getting 34s and 35s, and it's just like, dude, that's a phenomenal score. I know, it's such a minute difference. It's literally like a few questions that like you guessed wrong on and we guessed right on. Like that's it. But
at that time it felt like the world. Right. Like you look back on it now and you're like, wow, I really cared a lot about like the ACT or like doing well on like whatever like AP exam. And it's like, in reality, like I think that doing well in those cases was probably more of a detriment to like my arrogance
Oh,
than
for
anything.
sure.
Like I think like I was very arrogant in high school, and like
Hmm.
even like this whole conversation, like I feel like I've been very arrogant, like talking about just like, oh, like I went to this great school. Like I hate arrogance, and like I've
Yeah.
grown to like really like try and like put that aside, because like I think I got very arrogant like late high school and like early college, and then
Hmm.
like I went to Vandy, then I was surrounded by like geniuses, like
Yeah, now you're a
kids.
small fish in a big pond.
Exactly, like everyone there was like valedictorian, like
Hmm.
perfect ACT, like did all the like I was not close to valedictorian, like I didn't have a perfect ACT. It made me feel like I am not all that I thought I was. Like and putting myself in that situation I think was really good for me, because it was very humbling to
Yeah.
like put like going to like CS class, and like the other people in the class are like getting like hundreds on every exam. Everything's so easy to them. Like
Hmm.
one of my friends from college, like he uh interned at Facebook after his freshman year of college, which
Wow.
was a junior level internship. He had just
Yeah.
been like doing so much CS stuff for his entire life. And then not only that, they tell you your rank, like you get rated at the end of your internship, but
Hmm.
they rank all of the interns.
Yeah.
God knows why, but he was ranked as the number one intern in all of Facebook, as in just like how much
Just the
stuff
company.
but like I
Oh
don't know what
man.
the metric is, but he interned there every year and works there
Yeah.
full time now. Every year he was rated as the number one intern, because he was just that good at like
Hmm.
he's already like at this, like he was a year younger than me because he skipped a grade
Hmm.
before college. He's already now I think a manager, which at a tech company like that, at a Facebook where they have such structure because of how large they are,
Yeah.
that's means he was promoted every year, which is nearly impossible. So it's like
Yeah.
those are the type of kids that I was surrounded with, and it's like knowing that those people exist was like very good for me to like get out of that, like, oh, I was a good student in high school and did well in the ACT
Yeah, well
and all that.
there's a real temptation to like rest on my laurels, if you know that term. And like it's so interesting, like actually like when I find myself specifically in almost like threatening situations where I feel like people are kind of hinting that I'm incompetent or that like I don't know what I'm doing, academic setting or not academic setting, it always pops into my mind of like, what if I just had this, I have this ace up my sleeve and I just lay a fact, like I got a 35 ACT, like who are you talking to? That's like a 99.6 percentile. And it's just that's the most honest thing I can say, is that like when I'm getting heated emotion, I almost relied and sometimes still rely on that to like be like, I am competent. Like, so that's almost like my token there. And it's so interesting, like your path towards like, I guess, humility from like intellectual arrogance. I would call it like comparative, where like,
Yeah.
it depended relative on your circumstance. I mean, there weren't schmucks at Rice. I mean,
No,
there's a lot of
everyone
smart
there was
people there,
pretty
but
smart.
yeah, but then you get put on a different spectrum and you kind of get humbled in that regard. I think that that's like one very real way, but like I almost like I think the path for me wasn't like it wasn't like I went up to play like in the major leagues like intellectually. That wasn't really my path. My more like the path that more I was hinting at was like, okay, I know the game. We talk about the game of school so much, and there's
Game
certain
of life.
shortcuts, yeah. But like, I thought I understood like the macro or like the meta game, but like I'm trying to have my intellect and like my learning help me inform myself about all the things I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I think that like you have to think about like why were we given this intellect, and I think kind of a shallow way would be like, well, so you can apply it and do all these things in the world. But I think like there's almost something more interesting about the idea of like you understand something really well to gain appreciation for how unbelievably well like the top people do it, and like how complex and applied all of these things are. I think there's something very beautiful about that. And like that's a very philosophical term of like talking about like Socrates was, they called him the wisest man, in ancient Greece, because he was the one that said that I do not know. And
Yeah.
like, you can almost have like the bell curve where you can have like, the baby that can't even say the words I don't know because they don't know the words. And then you have like the wise man that has climbed the peaks of like truly being like excellent in some regard,
Yeah.
and then being able to say like with no sense of false humility, but just saying like, I don't know. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
like an experience for you, but like I'm
No,
trying to like,
it is
step
no,
into
and
that more.
like it is like a huge piece of like, in my opinion, like growing as a human being is like admitting when you don't know something, because it's
Yeah.
like that's one of the big problems with like being so arrogant is like if you are arrogant, you're just gonna like, oh, like I'm smart, like I know everything, but it's
Yeah.
like not only do you not know everything, no one does, first of all. Second
Mm-hmm.
of all, intelligence is not the only like, let's say like books,
Currency. Or,
yeah, like it's not the only like book smart, like being book smart
oh,
isn't the
sure.
only type of
Yeah.
intelligence. Like there are so many different types of intelligence you can
Mm-hmm.
be. Like there's like being street smart, like there's like being emotionally intelligent, there's so many different
Yeah.
aspects, like
No, it's
some,
like knowing you. You're such a big proponent of that idea. You
yeah,
talk about that all the time.
because it's so fundamental to learn that like you can be like so smart in all these different areas, but like there's so many areas that like I don't like fully understand. Like if I watch a game of basketball, like
Mm-hmm.
am I gonna like fully understand every single thing that they're doing? Like sure, I like sports a lot, and like I probably could like understand conceptually a lot of what's going on in football, but like I don't watch basketball. But
Uh-huh.
like their player, like let's take like LeBron James, like he probably has the highest like IQ of basketball out of anyone in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just understands the game at a level that's way deeper than anyone else. And
Right.
it's like that is like, sure, he's like the leading intellect in that, but does that make him like the smartest person alive? Like no, like that's
Mm-hmm.
one aspect of like intelligence, and it's
Right.
like that same concept applies to everything in your life. And it's like being able to say like I don't understand or like I don't know about other areas
Mm-hmm.
is so important, because that's how you're going to learn and grow in them.
Yeah.
And that's like what I try to do now is like be more humble. Like I don't want to be the loudest mouth in the room every room I walk into because I think I'm smart. Like
Mm-hmm.
every room I walk into, everyone's going to have different experiences and ideas about different things, and we can all grow together by like talking about them openly, whatever the area is. Like there could be someone in the room that's like really good at baking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about baking. I've never baked in my life, but like it's a valuable topic, like in my opinion, to like learn something more about that, because you're going to learn more about like the fundamentals of like why you add these ingredients, like what is actually like I don't know, like causing this to taste so good, like is it just like a lot of sugar? Like I don't know anything, and it's like I know
I
it's a
know.
stupid
No,
concept,
no,
but,
it's true.
like
It's
it's
just
just
like,
like a stupid example, but like
but you can actually like,
yeah,
it's yeah. There's so many things that like you don't even know that they exist that you don't know about. Like I'm not freaking like waving my like my flag of like knowing stuff about you, but like, do you know what ISO means?
I like and
No,
I,
it's a camera term. It's about how much light goes in the sensor. So it's just like
I was like I
it's
was
like
thinking
things like that where it's
ISO
like
basketball.
you wouldn't even know where to start. Oh yeah, ISO basketball. But it's like you can talk about like things that like neither of us have ever even heard about. So like it talks about like, or I guess it speaks to like the complexity of the world and like how rich it is. And I
Yeah.
think for a person that is still stuck in the arrogance, that is almost striking on an insecurity because they don't know it yet, and then you get very performative and scrambly and you feel like you have to know it. Or like when you take the right approach, the fact that the world is so complex can actually be a gift, because then you can realize that like you occupy a very specific space in that you don't need to occupy the whole thing, or else it's like a god
You're
complex.
never
So
expected to be an expert in everything, nor will you be. And it's
yeah.
like being able to understand that is really important, because it's like that is like at the core what arrogance and pride and like egotistical people are. Is like you are just basically you think you know everything
Mm-hmm.
about everything,
Right.
no matter what the topic is, and like you refuse to admit being wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that is the fundamental thing that I want to stay away from, because I know naturally I am arrogant and I
Yeah.
don't want to be. So like that's what I try to work towards, is like understanding that it's okay to not know things, and like humbling myself to like put myself in situations to learn from others that do know those things so that I can grow. And like of course like the competitive side of me is like I want to learn from them and grow from them so that I can surpass them,
Mm-hmm.
which is inherently probably not great to have as like a concept as well, but like that's my drive to like do
Yeah, it's
things.
almost like a survival instinct at that point where it's
Yeah.
just like, oh man, I gotta like outcompete or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good place to
But
wrap
the
up.
thing is, like, when I want to outcompete people, I don't want to like leave them in the dust. Like, I want to grow and bring others and grow with them all together. Like that's I
Doesn't
think
sound like that when you trash talk the other team in soccer. But we won't dwell on
no,
that.
I want to lift my teammates up.
Oh, okay,
My
yeah,
enemies now.
yeah, us versus them. Okay, well, always at the end of the podcast, we always ask: is there anything that you want prayer for? Is there any like family members or anything like that in your life? I mean, for like humility, I think is a really obvious thing for both of us.
Yeah, I mean that's an important one. I mean humility for everyone. I think is like a big thing. I don't like. Thankfully, there's no one in my family that's like doing unhealthily right now.
Yeah.
So like I don't have like a specific
that's
person
good.
or friend
Yeah,
to
that's
like
fine.
name. So
That's all good.
I'll pray for you.
Let's just pray for humility. So let's do it now. In the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Amen. God, thank you for this present moment. Please be with us and help us to understand how big you are, how small we are, and how good it is that you are the one that has control over our lives. Help us to truly appreciate the gifts over my life, over Zach's life, especially the gift of intelligence. Just staying with that for a second and just to really reflect on how blessed that has made us, how that's affected all of our upbringing up to now, and to bear that gift with absolute humility is what we ask today, to not let it tilt towards arrogance, not to overpower other people or to misguide people or to lift up our own ego, but instead to actually put us in a place of better receptivity of those around us. Please, in whatever way it is, even if it is humiliating, help us to have more humility in our lives. Amen. In the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Hey, my water.
That was great. Thank you.
Yeah, that was very good.